What if I told you that one of the most realistic, non-lethal weapons in the world could be mistaken for a real firearm? A tool designed for safety that might actually put its user in danger. Today, we're diving into the Umarex T4E series, a line of non-lethal weapons that sits right at the crossroads of law enforcement training, self-defense, and recreation. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why Umarex T4E could either dominate the American market or collapse under its own contradictions. The global non-lethal weapons industry is booming. Valued at nearly $1.8 billion in 2024, it's projected to reach almost $3 billion by 2032. Why? Because the world is searching for alternatives. Alternatives to deadly force. Alternatives to controversial policing. Alternatives that give civilians a sense of security without taking a life. And right in the middle of this growth is Umarex, with its bold Training for Engagement line, better known as T4E. But here's the twist. Their greatest strength could also be their greatest weakness. Let's start with what makes Umarex so unique. Unlike many competitors, Umarex has official licenses with giants like Glock, Smith & Wesson, and Heckler & Koch. Their replicas are one-to-one in size, weight, and function. In your hand, a T4E Glock feels indistinguishable from the real deal, except it fires rubber, powder, or pepper rounds instead of bullets. This realism makes it perfect for police and military training, where muscle memory is everything. But here's the dilemma. That same realism makes it a legal and reputational nightmare. Think about it. A civilian carrying a T4E pistol for self-defense could be mistaken by police for holding a lethal weapon. In some states, like California or New York, that's already triggered regulations demanding bright colors or orange tips on replicas. And if you're Umarex, this cuts straight to your brand identity, because the selling point of realism is exactly what regulators and critics want to erase. Now, here's something that most people don't know. Despite being marketed partly as paintball markers, the T4E line has a pretty bad reputation in the paintball community. Why? Because they simply don't perform like real paintball markers. Traditional paintball guns can feed hundreds of rounds, have adjustable velocity, and modular barrels. T4E pistols? They usually carry between 4 and 8 rounds, and their internal mechanics, optimized for rubber or hard projectiles, are too harsh for fragile paintballs. The result? Constant ball breakage, messy cleaning, and frustrated players. One Reddit user summed it up perfectly. It's not a paintball marker, it's a self-defense toy disguised as one. And that distinction matters, because if Umarex can't satisfy serious paintball enthusiasts, it forces them to focus almost entirely on training and self-defense niches. But if paintballers are disappointed, self-defense buyers demand something much more critical: reliability. And here, Umarex faced a disaster. In early 2025, Umarex USA issued a recall for over 32,000 units of its T4E TR50 revolver. Why? Because the CO2 cartridge could eject with dangerous force straight out of the grip. Imagine loading your revolver in a high-stress situation, only to have the cartridge blast out and break your hand. That's exactly what happened. Umarex logged 30 reports with at least 7 injuries, including fractures and bruises. Now ask yourself, what's the number one thing you expect from a self-defense weapon? Trust. And in that moment, Umarex broke it. Competitors like Byrna, who position themselves as specialists in non-lethal defense, couldn't have asked for better ammunition, metaphorically speaking, against Umarex's reputation. If Umarex struggles with brand clarity, Byrna has done the opposite. Their entire identity is built on one promise: designed to stop, not to kill. Byrna doesn't try to be paintball, doesn't try to be training equipment, doesn't try to serve 3 masters at once. Instead, it focuses entirely on non-lethal self-defense. Their flagship launcher fires .68 caliber kinetic and chemical rounds, powerful enough to incapacitate an attacker for up to 30 minutes at distances of nearly 60 feet. No confusion, no dual marketing message, just one mission: protect the user. Meanwhile, Umarex is torn between realism for police, affordability for civilians, and fun for paintballers. That lack of focus is where Byrna wins. Because while Umarex says we look like real guns, Byrna says we save real lives. And in the world of self-defense, the message matters just as much as the mechanics.
Here's where things get interesting.
The internet is full of debates over Umarex. On one side, paintball players dismiss T4E as a novelty. On the other, self-defense users praise its realism, its weight, and the stopping power of rubber or pepper rounds. One YouTube reviewer even described the first strike projectiles as having scary accuracy. So, which side is right? Both. Because Umarex is living in a split identity. Serious players see it as a toy. Self-defense buyers see it as a lifeline. And that contradiction creates a dangerous gap in the market. Think about it like this. When one product tries to be a Swiss Army knife, it rarely becomes the best knife. The same principle applies here. Umarex has to choose. Are they training gear, recreational toys, or life-saving defense tools? Because trying to be all three risks alienating all three. Now, let's talk about the biggest storm cloud hanging over Umarex: American laws. At the federal level, air guns aren't classified as firearms. That sounds simple, but it isn't. In New Jersey, air guns are legally firearms, requiring a firearm ID card to own. In Arkansas, airsoft-style weapons are outright banned. Meanwhile, states like California demand orange tips or bright colors for replicas, while others barely regulate them at all. For a company like Umarex, this creates chaos. Imagine shipping a product to 50 states with 50 different rules. For consumers, it's even worse. Buying a T4E pistol online might be perfectly legal in one state and a crime in another. And that's just the start. There's also the perception problem. A T4E Glock, identical to the real thing, could get a user killed if police mistake it for a firearm. This isn't just a legal issue, it's a life or death issue. And unlike Byrna, which uses bright, distinctive design,
Umarex is deliberately walking that razor-thin line between realism and risk. Here's a fascinating but little-known fact. Many Umarex T4E models are chambered in .50 caliber. Sounds powerful, right? The problem is that most people hear .50 caliber and immediately think of the infamous .50 BMG, one of the deadliest rifle cartridges ever made. Several states already ban or restrict .50 BMG rifles. Now, imagine lawmakers who don't understand the difference looking at a box labeled T4E .50. Even though these are just rubber or powder balls, the name alone creates confusion and potential for future regulation. It's like branding a water gun with the same name as a flamethrower. Perception often outweighs reality. This is the hidden vulnerability of Umarex. The closer it gets to real firearms in design, in caliber naming, in feel, the more it risks becoming tangled in laws and public fear designed for real guns. By now, you can see the pattern. Umarex lives on the edge of innovation and risk. But nothing exposed that balance more than the TR-50 recall. Over 32,000 revolvers pulled back because the CO2 cartridge could literally explode out of the grip. 7 confirmed injuries, including fractured fingers and bruised hands. Think about the irony: a weapon sold for self-defense, injuring the very people it was supposed to protect. In the self-defense market, trust is everything. A firearm misfire? That's catastrophic. A non-lethal launcher that hurts you instead of the threat? That's unforgivable. Byrna and other competitors didn't even need to attack Umarex. The recall did all the talking. And for thousands of buyers, the damage to the brand's credibility will take years, maybe decades to repair. So what does Umarex do now? Experts argue the brand has one option: divide and conquer. Separate the product lines. One sub-brand for professional training and self-defense. Another sub-brand for recreation and paintball. Think of it as T4E Pro and T4E Fun. T4E Pro would focus on reliability, durability, and compatibility with high-performance rounds like PAVA or First Strike. The message? Realism for force-on-force training and life-saving defense. On the other side, T4E Fun would embrace the recreational market, redesigning markers with adjustable velocity, modular barrels, and smoother feeding for paintballs. The message? Play without compromise. Without this clear segmentation, Umarex risks being stuck in the same no man's land. Too serious for fun, too fragile for defense. But product design isn't enough. Umarex also needs a communication strategy to win back trust. That means transparency. Not just a press release about the recall, but video demonstrations, expert testimonials, and proactive proof that new models are safe. It means leveraging authority figures like NRA instructors to validate the training line. And it means tailoring content to specific audiences, instead of one-size-fits-all ads. Finally, Umarex must confront the legal chaos head-on. Imagine if their website had a clear, state-by-state legal guide for buyers, helping customers avoid mistakes and showing that Umarex takes responsibility. Imagine if future designs used distinct color markings to reduce the risk of confusion with real firearms. These small steps could turn their greatest liability into a unique selling point. The brand that cares not just about realism, but about responsibility. The global non-lethal weapons market isn't slowing down. From $1.8 billion today to nearly $3 billion in less than a decade, the demand will keep climbing. Governments want crowd-control tools. Private security companies want deterrence without fatalities. And civilians want peace of mind without legal or moral consequences. Umarex is perfectly positioned to ride this wave, but only if it can redefine itself. The lesson is clear. The American market won't forgive uncertainty. Byrna is proof of that. A company that carved out an identity by focusing on one mission. If Umarex doesn't adapt, competitors with clearer strategies will leave them behind. The question is not whether non-lethal defense will dominate the future. The question is, will Umarex still be in the game when it does? So, what have we learned? That Umarex T4E is both revolutionary and vulnerable. Its hyper-realistic replicas make it an excellent training tool, but also a legal and reputational risk. Its attempt to serve both paintballers and defenders leaves both sides unsatisfied. And its recall has damaged the one thing no brand can afford to lose: trust. The future of Umarex depends on clarity, clear product segmentation, clear communication, clear responsibility for consumer safety. Because in a world that increasingly demands non-lethal solutions, clarity is the difference between leading the market or being forgotten. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think realism is worth the risk? Should Umarex double down on training and defense, or reinvent itself for recreation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button, subscribe, and check out our deep dive on Byrna's non-lethal arsenal, linked right here. Because the future of defense is closer than you think.